The case of Alison Bonilla. Alison Pamela Bonilla Vasquez was born on November 7, 2001, in Cartago, Costa Rica. She is an only child and lives with her mother, Yendry Vasquez. In addition to her mother, her grandparents, Ramon and Marjorie, and her aunt, Samara, also helped raise Alison. Alison's father left the family shortly after her birth, choosing to be with another woman who was pregnant. He did not want to play a role in Alison's life. Only once, when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, did he request to see his daughter, and Yendry allowed him to do so. It is worth noting that his second family was unaware of Alison's existence. Alison and her mother, Yendry, shared an especially close relationship. For Alison, Yendry was not only a mother, but also a father figure. Therefore, Alison often gave her mother gifts on Father's Day. Their bond went beyond a typical mother-daughter relationship. Alison felt comfortable sharing everything with Yendry without fear of being misunderstood or judged. Despite not having a father, Alison did not feel lonely or abandoned. She had a large family and enjoyed spending time with them. She also attended church regularly every Sunday. Relatives described Alison as kind, outgoing, and friendly. In photos, she always appeared happy, showing no signs of sadness or longing in her eyes. Alison had always dreamed of becoming a model. She decided to drop out of 8th grade to focus on makeup classes, believing that pursuing both was too difficult. She did not want to waste time on something that would not help her achieve her goals. Afterward, Alison began searching for a job to help her mother pay the bills, but received no responses from the places she applied to, which made her very sad. Her mother, Yendry, realized that Alison would have difficulty finding a job due to her limited education, so she encouraged her to take evening classes. At age 18, Alison enrolled in Liceo Enrique Geyer, a few miles from home. During this time, she completed a pastry course and began practicing. Alison made delicious cakes and desserts that were loved by everyone in the neighborhood. This allowed her to find a way to earn money from her baking skills. Alison had a boyfriend named Harold Surisolano, who lived in Cochi, a district in the province of Cartago, Costa Rica. Typically, Alison stayed home with her mother in the mornings, then met Harold, and afterward attended evening school at 6 o'clock. She often returned home late by bus. The route from the bus stop to her house was dangerous, dark, and deserted. Therefore, Alison always informed her mother of her location, and sometimes her mother picked her up at the bus stop or halfway home. On March 4, 2020, Alison went to her mother's nail salon and then visited a classmate for about 15 minutes. They arrived at school at 6 p.m. and separated because they had different classes. Alison entered the school and waited in an empty classroom for about 15 minutes before realizing that her classes had been canceled for the day. Instead of returning home immediately, she decided to visit her aunt, who lived near the school. However, her aunt was not home. Alison then chose to go to her boyfriend Harold's house. Upon arrival, she learned that Harold was at work but would return soon. Harold's mother invited Alison inside to wait. When Harold came back, the family had dinner together, discussing various topics and their future plans. Afterward, Harold excused himself for a moment, citing urgent business, but promising to return soon. At 8:15 p.m., Alison left Harold's house without waiting for him to come back. This initiated a chain of events that would later become nationally known. Harold returned about 5 minutes later and, noticing that Alison had left, texted her to ask where she was and offered to give her a ride home on his bike. Alison immediately replied that she had already reached the bus stop. While waiting for the bus, she texted her friend Pa to ask if Pa's cousin could give her a ride on his bike. However, Pa's cousin refused because his bike was special and unsuitable for 2 people. It remains unclear why Alison did not ask her boyfriend for assistance. She may have been angry with him or did not want to trouble him. Alison got off the bus at 8:43 p.m. Her house was about a mile away. Feeling anxious and scared, she texted her mother to pick her up. At 8:45 p.m., Alison texted both her boyfriend and her mother to report that 2 suspicious men had exited a car and were following her. She decided to run home to avoid them. The road Alison was on was dangerous, poorly lit, and sparsely populated. Only one security camera covered the area, capturing a blurry image that might have been Alison. Her mother, Yendry, went to a bridge about half a mile from their home to pick her up, but did not see her. She tried to remain calm, thinking Alison might have returned to the bus stop for safety, but she was not there either. Yendri eventually assumed that Allison had not noticed her and had continued home on her own. When Yendri returned home, she realized Allison was still missing. She immediately called relatives and friends to help search for her. About 30 minutes later, Harold woke up and received a call from his Aunt Samara, informing him that Allison was missing. He tried to contact Yendri, but was unable to reach her. 3 hours later, Yendri reported Allison missing to the police, and the search officially began. Fortunately, Yendri had the last photo of Allison in the clothes she had been wearing that evening. Police checked several locations, from the bus stop to Allison's house, including Catsey Lake and the nearby hydroelectric dam. On March 5, 2020, authorities found their first clue: Allison's glasses in the grass about a mile from her home. Despite this, Allison seemed to have vanished without a trace. 8 days later, police discovered Allison's identification on a coffee plantation. This was surprising because the area had already been searched multiple times. What was particularly suspicious was that her ID had been placed in a clean and conspicuous spot, as if someone had intentionally left it there to mislead investigators or conceal something. 15 days after Allison disappeared, Yendri received a call from Allison's father. Instead of showing concern or offering assistance, he said that Allison had gone missing because she was too beautiful. Shocked and disgusted by his insensitive comment, Yendri immediately hung up, unable to believe what she had just heard. For an extended period, family, police, and volunteers continued searching for Allison. Every Sunday, they hung posters with her picture. At one point, they painted messages on the streets, tracing Allison's likely path from the intersection to the bridge where she was believed to have disappeared. Posters were also placed on roadside poles to attract the attention of passers-by. During this time, police received an important lead. A man came forward claiming that he knew Allison and had seen her on the night she disappeared. According to him, at around 8:30 p.m., he left his home on a motorbike to pick someone up. On the way, he noticed Allison near a burgundy two-door BMW parked next to her. He turned around to check on the situation and realized it was his cousin's BMW. He was certain because the car had distinctive bright yellow headlights. Another witness confirmed seeing the same BMW near the location where Allison went missing that evening. The car belonged to 28-year-old Nelson Sanchez Urania, nicknamed Sukia. Locals associated him with gang activity in the area. In fact, Nelson and Allison knew each other. Their families had been acquainted for a long time and lived in the same neighborhood. According to Allison's mother, however, they had only interacted a few times, and their relationship was strictly casual and neighborly, not a close friendship. On one occasion, Nelson had offered to give Allison and her cousins a ride home. She agreed, as it was in the morning, she was not alone, and she believed Nelson to be a good person. On March 2, 2020, 2 days before Allison went missing, Nelson reached out to her through Facebook. He sent a message requesting that Allison answer some questions. Following her cousin's advice, Allison consented to respond. Afterwards, Nelson inquired about Allison's feelings toward him. Specifically, he wanted to know if Allison liked him. Allison was puzzled by Nelson's sudden question, as they were not close and barely knew one another. When Allison asked why he was asking, Nelson clarified that he did not have a negative opinion of her, but wanted to know if she thought poorly of him. Allison reassured Nelson that she did not hate him and that everything between them was normal. Nelson thanked her and said goodbye. Police searched Nelson's residence and confiscated his car, cell phone, and computer. Investigators discovered disturbing images of women being abused on his phone. When they examined the car, they found it had been meticulously cleaned with car polish. However, the front driver's seat carpet and trunk carpet had been removed. Police detected hair and blood on the trunk lid and sent samples to a laboratory for analysis. After inspecting the car's exterior, police employed a police dog to search for traces. The dog detected potential blood on the 2 front seats and in the trunk. To verify, the police performed a luminol test, a chemical that reacts with hemoglobin in blood. The results revealed numerous blood stains within the car's interior, despite the owner's efforts to remove them with cleaning agents. While awaiting the laboratory results, Nelson remained free but was under close police surveillance. Authorities monitored his every movement to prevent him from leaving the city or country. Although Yendri repeatedly requested his arrest, the police lacked sufficient evidence. Consequently, Nelson continued living freely without prosecution for several months. Yendri believed that Allison had been abducted for ransom. She attempted to remain calm, holding on to hope that her daughter was still alive. Preparing for Allison's return, Yendre kept her daughter's room unchanged, neither cleaning nor rearranging the furniture. She even purchased a gift for Allison. Yendre told the press, "I will continue to do so. As long as no evidence indicates she is dead, I continue to believe my daughter is alive and will come home." Laboratory results confirmed that the hair and blood found in Nelson's car belonged to Allison. Police immediately arrested Nelson. Later, his ex-girlfriend informed authorities that Nelson had never physically harmed her, but had exerted significant mental pressure on their relationship. Specifically, he prohibited her from contacting friends and using the internet. According to her, Nelson sought only a sexual relationship with her. His former employer revealed that he was highly irresponsible at work and had even stolen roughly $11,000. Additionally, his landlord stated that an ex-girlfriend had ended their relationship because she was exhausted from covering his debts. She described him as extremely spoiled. Subsequently, Nelson confessed to his crimes against Allison. He stated that on the night of Allison's disappearance, he found her walking alone on a deserted road. Exploiting the late hour and their acquaintance, Nelson offered her a ride. She agreed and entered the car without suspicion. However, instead of taking her home, Nelson drove to a remote coffee plantation and forced Allison out of the car, violently attacking her, knocking off her glasses, and leaving her nearly unconscious. He dragged her to a nearby abandoned house where he raped and brutally beat her. Nelson then bound her hands with cloth and duct tape to the car's front seat. Finally, he placed her in the trunk and drove to a dumpster in San Geronimo, Kochi. There, the perpetrator pushed Allison off a cliff into a pile of trash below. He rationalized his heinous actions by claiming he was under the influence of drugs. He also admitted a long-standing obsession with Allison, stating that when he saw her that night, he decided it was his opportunity to act on his dark intentions. Surprisingly, Nelson later retracted his initial confession, accusing the police of coercing him into admitting the crimes. However, the authorities possessed sufficient evidence to charge him despite his denials. The suspect faced a maximum prison sentence of 35 years. In the early morning of September 4th, a search team went to the San Ono landfill to look for Allison's body. Because the area was vast and difficult to access, locating Allison's remains was an extremely challenging task. Additionally, 6 months had passed since Allison went missing. Just 25 days after Allison disappeared, the police uncovered several important pieces of evidence. They found human bone fragments, including a spine, ribs, part of the pelvis, and a femur. They also recovered pieces of the clothing Allison had been wearing on the day she vanished, along with a pair of sneakers containing studs inside. All of these items were sent for testing and thorough analysis by the police. Jose Francisco Herrera, the suspect's defense attorney, questioned the legitimacy of the evidence because it had been discovered by volunteers rather than professional police. He also noted that the discovery of the remains coincided with the period when his client proclaimed his innocence, which he considered suspicious. Rodrigo Era, the attorney representing Allison's family, on the other hand, criticized the suspect's change of testimony, stating that it undermined the credibility of the official investigation. On October 5, 2020, experts confirmed that the remains belonged to Allison. Because only a partial body was recovered, they could not determine the precise cause of death. However, examination of the remains showed multiple fractures that appeared post-mortem, suggesting she may have fallen from a considerable height. Her clothing was torn, and her sneakers displayed bite marks, indicating a possible animal attack. This would account for why the remains were scattered across different sections of the landfill. Allison's mother, Yendre, expressed outrage at the police for not responding promptly. She believed that if Nelson had been arrested sooner, he would have confessed, and Allison's body would have been discovered in better condition. This represented an irreparable loss for the family. Despite the immense grief she endured, Yendre found some comfort in saying, "My daughter is in a better place now where no one can hurt her anymore." The trial of Nelson commenced on July 19, 2021. Allison's boyfriend was a key witness in the case. According to Harold's testimony, on the afternoon of March 4, 2020, at approximately 6:30 p.m., he returned home to find Allison there with her mother. Harold then left for roughly 5 to 10 minutes. Upon his return, he noticed that Allison had gone without saying anything. While Allison was on her way home, Harold sent her multiple text messages. Once she got off the bus, Allison texted Harold to report that two men were following her. Concerned for her safety, Harold advised that she take a taxi and promised to cover the cost. However, Allison refused twice, stating that she would run home. Harold received no further responses from her after that text. He explained that he only informed his mother of the situation and did not contact Allison's mother, Yendre, because his phone battery had died. He then fell asleep for about 30 minutes. It was Allison's aunt who later called him to notify him that his girlfriend was missing. Since that moment, he said he had been anxious and attempted to call Allison multiple times, but all calls went to voicemail. He also could not reach her through WhatsApp messages. Harold stated that he joined the search party for a few days, but eventually had to stop because he felt unwell and needed to work. He deeply wished that events had unfolded differently. If he could go back, he would have taken Allison home that night. Unfortunately, what occurred could not be changed. On August 18, 2021, the court sentenced Nelson to 18 years in prison for taking Allison's life. He could have received twice that sentence, but the judge noted there was no evidence confirming that Nelson knew Allison's route and time of return or that he planned to attack her. Moreover, due to the state of Allison's remains, no proof existed that Nelson had forced her into sexual activity. The story did not end there. Allison's family was dissatisfied with the original sentence, arguing that it was not proportionate to the crime. In 2022, they successfully appealed, and the court ordered a retrial of the case. As a result, on September 28, 2023, Nelson was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Allison's family's lawyer stressed that Nelson acted in a cruel and inhumane way, taking advantage of the trust of the victim and her relatives. The court determined that Nelson's actions were deliberate. He exploited his long-standing relationship with Allison to carry out the crime. The criminal court also considered Nelson's lack of remorse for his deeds. Although still grieving and angry, the victim's family felt some relief at the new verdict. The decision closed a painful chapter in their lives that had lasted more than 3 years and brought an end to this nightmare. Allison's family created a memorial at the location where her body was discovered. They placed a cross, flowers, and a small altar featuring a photo of Allison and a statue of the Virgin Mary. Allison's case drew significant attention in Costa Rican media and on social media. It also prompted numerous marches in memory of Allison and other women who had suffered similar acts of violence. Moving on to the next case. The case of Anna Mariah Wilson. In May 2022, the cycling world was shaken by the shocking murder of rising star Anna. The tragedy stemmed from jealousy, betrayal, and obsession. At the center of the case was a volatile love triangle involving her affair with Colin Strickland and his girlfriend, Caitlin Armstrong. What exactly happened that night in Austin, Texas, and what drove Anna to her tragic death? The case remains a chilling examination of human emotions and how they can escalate into acts of extreme cruelty. From Anna's untimely death to the dramatic international manhunt that followed, the case not only left a lasting impression but also raised urgent questions about trust and justice. Anna Mariah Wilson was born on May 18, 1996, in Littleton, New Hampshire. Her mother, Karen Wilson, was a cycling instructor, and her father, Eric Wilson, was a member of the U.S. ski team in 1977. With such parents, she seemed destined for a career in athletics. The family later moved to Kirby, Vermont, a scenic region with towering mountains, ski resorts, and elite preparatory schools focused on developing young athletes. Her father worked as a ski racing instructor at Burke Mountain Academy. From a young age, both Anna and her brother Matthew attended the school where their father worked. Both children were already accomplished skiers, much to the delight of their parents, especially Anna. She appeared to have inherited the athletic talent passed down from her parents. She was not only a skilled skier, but also captain of her football team and a promising gravel racer. This was where her true passion lay. For a brief period, she not only competed in events, but also won races with remarkable speed. Tragically, her bright future was destined to end prematurely. On May 11, 2022, at around 10 p.m. in Austin, Texas, during a friend's 25th birthday celebration, Anna was discovered bleeding from her head, unconscious, and not breathing in the bathroom. It was neither a freak accident nor a suicide attempt. She had been struck twice in the head and once in the chest. Shocked, her friend immediately called 911, desperately trying to save her. First responders arrived promptly and began CPR, but it was too late. Anna's fight for life had ended. Yet questions remained. What had happened, and what drove the attacker to end her life so brutally? Looking back, in 2019, Anna had graduated from Dortmund University with a degree in engineering. However, she had no plans to pursue a career as an engineer. Her true dream was to prove herself in sports. Within 2 years, she became a well-known cyclist, rising through the ranks and sharing podiums with established professional riders. She initially worked at a company, but soon quit to dedicate herself fully to cycling. Her professional life revolved entirely around training and competition. As her fame grew, she became more integrated into the cycling and athletic community, gaining friends and sponsors. One of these contacts was Colin Strickland, a 30-year-old experienced cyclist who shared a sponsor with Anna. In October 2021, Anna visited Austin, Texas, where Colin lived. Shortly after ending their previous relationships, Anna and Colin began a brief romantic involvement. Anna then returned to her home in California. Meanwhile, Colin reconciled with Caitlin Armstrong, a 34-year-old yoga instructor and realtor with whom he had previously dated. After their breakup, there was no animosity between Anna and Colin. They remained friends and active participants in the cycling community. A problem arose, however, because Caitlin disapproved of Colin's continued communication with Anna. Unaware of their prior involvement, Caitlin could not comprehend that their relationship was strictly platonic and professional. She began taking measures to prevent their communication, including blocking calls and deleting Anna's messages from Colin's phone. Colin, reluctant to end his relationship with Caitlin, feared losing her. In a misguided attempt to calm Caitlin, he saved Anna's number in his phone under a different name. Perhaps he saw no better solution, but it proved unwise. In January 2022, Anna and Colin participated in a cycling competition in Arkansas, accompanied by Caitlin. This created an awkward situation. Anna appeared unaware of the tension her friendship with Colin was causing. Though no overt conflict occurred, the atmosphere remained strained. The day after the event, Anna texted Colin asking about the status of their relationship. She mentioned that if Colin preferred to remain just friends, she was fine with that, but they needed to have a conversation. From Anna's message, it appeared she was uncertain about their relationship, at least from her perspective. Matters became even more complicated when Caitlin learned about Anna and Colin's past romantic involvement. Caitlin's friends reported that she was extremely angry, with some claiming she even threatened Anna, saying she would kill her. While such statements can be exaggerated in emotional moments and may not reflect actual intent, Caitlin felt her concerns were justified. Colin communicated with Anna during training, spent significant time with her at cycling competitions, and frequently messaged her. Since Caitlin knew about their prior relationship, she interpreted the situation differently. To her, it seemed obvious that Colin was cheating. Her suspicion intensified when she discovered that Colin had saved his messages with Anna under a fake name on his phone. Although Caitlin could have reacted impulsively, she remained composed and took months to process everything. On May 10th, Anna returned to Austin for a bike ride called Gravel Locomotives and stayed with a friend. Colin was also present on the trip. He planned to go swimming with Anna on May 11th at 5:30 p.m. and misled Caitlin about his evening plans. He picked up Anna from her friend's house, and they swam in a deep pool with a whirlpool as planned. After swimming, Colin and Anna had dinner at a poolside restaurant. He then dropped Anna back at her friend's house at 8:37 p.m. Colin texted Caitlin, claiming he had been asked to deliver flowers to a friend's house and was on his way home. He did not wait to ensure Anna arrived safely, assuming she would be fine. Coincidentally, as Colin sent the text, Anna's friend's doorbell rang, confirming her arrival. Of course, Caitlin did not believe Colin's story about delivering flowers. Curious about his actual activities, she used a special app on her phone to track his location. She also used the same app to check Anna's whereabouts. This app is typically used to plan exercise routes, which can be shared and compared with other users. It also allows real-time tracking of someone's location, such as during a run or bike ride, or even to monitor a partner suspected of infidelity. At 8:37 p.m., Anna arrived at her friend's house to attend the birthday celebration. Around 10 p.m., her friend called 911 after finding Anna seriously injured from a brutal attack. The police immediately began investigating the murder. The situation was complicated by the fact that the victim was from out of town. The first priority for law enforcement was identifying anyone in the area who knew Anna, and they quickly developed leads. They asked Anna's friend if anything had been stolen, but there were no obvious signs of a burglary. The only notable missing item was Anna's bicycle, which police later discovered abandoned in nearby bushes. The bike held significant value for a professional cyclist. However, if the attack had been a burglary, why had the perpetrator left the bike behind while taking nothing else from the house? The police quickly concluded that the incident was not the result of a failed burglary. Instead, it seems that the perpetrator held a personal grudge against the victim. Anna's friend, who had called 911, devastated by Anna's death, showed no indications of involvement. Consequently, the police ruled her out as a suspect. The investigation then shifted toward Anna's acquaintances in the area, specifically Colin and Caitlin. The police discovered that Caitlin had a Class B warrant for her arrest. Although this warrant was not for a serious offense, it was connected to fraud. Known previously, Caitlin had gone to a Botox clinic and, when it came time to pay, told the staff that her credit card was in her car. She left to retrieve her credit card, but never returned. The fraud was minor, totaling only $600, yet it gave the police a reason to bring Caitlin in for questioning regarding Anna's murder. Officer Wilson immediately believed it was time for Caitlin to face consequences for her actions. She did not deny her wrongdoing, as she likely anticipated only a minor penalty, such as an apology and a fine. Caitlin's demeanor changed dramatically when the police first asked about her activities over the prior 24 hours and then questioned her about Anna. Upon mention of the murder, her expression dropped, and she froze, visibly confused and uncertain how to respond. Despite her confusion, Caitlin attempted to account for her whereabouts, but her explanation was unconvincing. The investigator noted that Anna's friend had a doorbell camera and security cameras around her house. One camera focused on the front of the house, capturing part of the sidewalk and alley, along with passing cars and pedestrians. This footage became crucial. It recorded a black Jeep Grand Cherokee passing the house on May 11th, the same night Anna was killed. Caitlin was driving that vehicle. The police asked Caitlin to explain why she was in the area, but she could not provide a reason. She sat silently, appearing upset, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact, and rolling her eyes. Meanwhile, the police spoke with Colin, who recounted the full story of his friendship with Anna and the complications with Caitlin. The detectives described the situation as a love triangle involving Colin, Caitlin, and Anna. She had no alibi. On the other hand, the police had made an administrative error in the arrest warrant. Worse, the police database had her date of birth incorrect. Due to this error, Caitlin was released. After leaving the station, Caitlin acted quickly. She did not want to wait for the police to arrive at her door again, which she expected would occur soon. Caitlin booked a flight from Chile to New York, deleted all her social media accounts, and disappeared. For someone wishing to vanish, the vast and varied landscapes of the United States provide ideal cover. New York, with its enormous urban environment, offers the perfect concealment. Any police search in such a massive city would be like finding a needle in a haystack. On May 14th at 12:30, Caitlin was seen on surveillance entering Austin International Airport. She then took a connecting flight to Houston and another to LaGuardia Airport in New York. On May 17th, U.S. Marshals obtained a warrant for Caitlin Armstrong's arrest, which had previously gone unexecuted. Shortly afterward, on May 18th, she was spotted at LaGuardia Airport. Caitlin, however, used smaller domestic flights to evade authorities, staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Upon arriving in New York, she obtained an ID under the name Christine Armstrong, her sister's name. At the time, little was known about this sister. Authorities believed Christine did not live in New York, but was actually in California. Obtaining an ID was a risky move for Caitlin. Authorities now knew she was in New York, and the ID was linked to a relative with the same last name. It was highly improbable that her sister, supposedly in California, would suddenly move to New York while Caitlin was on the run. Police eventually obtained a copy of Caitlin's ID, listing her address as Camp Haven, a recreational area in Livingston Estate, New York. 6 weeks into the search, there were no leads. Colin went into hiding, fearing that Caitlin would return and harm him after he spoke out. Caitlin's sister, Tina Armstrong, also sought refuge, avoiding the media and making no public comments about Caitlin. At that time, Caitlin continued to avoid authorities, and the theory that she was hiding at Camp Haven was dismissed. After numerous efforts, on June 29, 2022, U.S. federal agents and Costa Rican police surrounded the San Teresa nursing home. A joint task force entered and quickly emerged with a woman dressed in black, her nose bandaged. She bore no resemblance to the striking Caitlin with long red hair and bright eyes, yet it was Caitlin. Authorities ultimately captured her. They discovered that Caitlin had left the U.S. via New York airport on May 18 at 8 p.m., using a fake passport. She had never been to Camp Haven. Instead, her strategy involved taking various flights to mislead the police, which succeeded perfectly. While police searched New York, she arrived in San Jose, Costa Rica. Since Caitlin's arrest, numerous rumors and theories have surfaced. A central question is whether she acted alone or had accomplices. She led a comfortable life as a yoga instructor and realtor, though she was not wealthy. In fewer than 50 days, she managed to book and pay for multiple domestic flights and an international flight to Costa Rica. The bruises and bandages on her face suggest she likely underwent plastic surgery shortly after arriving in Costa Rica, which is expensive. Eventually, police located her black Jeep at a local dealership. On May 13th, Caitlin sold the vehicle for $12,200. This partially explains how she was able to cover some of her expenses. However, $12,200 is not a substantial sum when trying to remain hidden, and it is doubtful it covered all her travel, living costs, and surgery. Suspicion has shifted toward her sister Christine. It is important to note that this remains only a theory, not confirmed, as no definitive evidence exists regarding anyone's involvement, including her sister. The day after Caitlin arrived in New York, she obtained an ID under Christine's name. When arrested, she had a copy of Christine's driver's license with her. Meanwhile, the day after Caitlin's arrival, Christine applied for a new driver's license, claiming hers was lost. Did she assist Caitlin in evading authorities? This question remains unanswered. Another possibility is that Colin may have played a significant role in the case. Some suspect a conspiracy involving Colin and Caitlin. They believe Colin's text to Caitlin, sent just after he dropped Anna off at her friend's house, claiming he was delivering flowers, was actually a secret message about Anna's location. There is no evidence supporting this theory. It remains speculative. Nonetheless, Colin has a questionable history of honesty. He concealed his relationship with Anna and altered her name in his phone to prevent Caitlin from discovering the truth. He also told police that he and Caitlin had broken up before Anna arrived in town and that Caitlin approved of him dating others. If so, why did he text Caitlin about his whereabouts, and why was she upset about Anna and Colin's friendship? Since Caitlin's arrest, police have worked diligently to gather evidence. A key piece involves ballistic evidence linked to a 9mm weapon purchased by Colin, not Caitlin. A man gave this weapon to her in January 2022, and investigators later found it in her home. Detectives are also investigating whether someone from another country assisted Caitlin. After her deportation, law enforcement held a press conference discussing how rapidly she managed to escape and catch multiple connecting flights. Additionally, she possessed a passport that did not belong to her. On July 21, 2022, Caitlin participated in her first online trial, pleading not guilty to first-degree murder. In October 2022, she attended a second hearing to determine whether she could be released while awaiting a jury trial. Various options were discussed, but Caitlin remained confident she would face a grand jury regarding the murder charges, insisting on her innocence. She remained in Travis County Jail until her trial. According to her lawyer, prosecutors were hesitant to proceed to trial, citing insufficient evidence for a conviction. The defense argued that the officers involved were inexperienced and did not properly act on information regarding Caitlin's ex-boyfriend. They also noted that Caitlin's and Colin's home was vandalized the night Anna was killed, questioning why this was not thoroughly investigated and who may have been responsible. The defense argued that the police investigation was incompetent. They assert that law enforcement attempted to cover up errors and misconduct related to the case. The court hearing was scheduled 1 week after the bail hearing. However, the defense filed a motion to suppress evidence obtained by police, claiming Caitlin was not read her rights. They argued this invalidated evidence, including her initial arrest linked to the Botox clinic. As a result, the judge paused the trial while considering the motions, and a new pretrial date was set for June 22, 2023, though it has not yet been fully confirmed. A few months later, Caitlin Armstrong was sentenced to 90 years in prison for Anna Mariah Wilson's murder. The sentence was handed down on November 17, 2023, following her conviction by a Texas jury the previous day. Caitlin was found guilty of attacking Anna 3 times in May 2022, motivated by jealousy over Anna's prior relationship with her boyfriend, Colin. Anna, a rising star in professional cycling, was shot and killed in Austin, Texas. Investigations revealed disturbing connections between Caitlin Armstrong, Cloyne, and Anna. Caitlin's jealousy led her to commit murder. Her trial concluded in November 2023 with a guilty verdict and a 90-year prison sentence. Although the case is closed, the circumstances surrounding Anna's death continue to provoke debate. Moving on to the next case. Case of Anna Repkina. Anna Alexieva Repkina, a charming and outgoing woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, came from a respectable family. With a strong work ethic, a passion for travel, rock music, and cats, of which she owned several, Anna was a vibrant individual. She loved capturing life's precious moments through photography and held romantic relationships in high regard. Her ultimate aspiration was to find true love, settle down, have children, and create a happy family. Anna's remarkable sense of humor made her enjoyable to be around, something her friends and acquaintances frequently noted. However, her life took a dramatic turn in 2016 when a high school sweetheart of 7 years ended their relationship, leaving her heartbroken. Despite this heartbreak, Anna refused to abandon her dreams. She took the initiative to try online dating, determined to find her ideal partner. On a Russian dating site, she encountered a promising match who seemed to embody all the qualities she sought. Anna met a charming young man named William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. What attracted her to him was his fascination with Russian culture, but more importantly, his adoration for her. William consistently treated Anna with kindness, frequently complimenting her and making an effort to be present for her whenever she needed him, despite the physical distance separating them. Those who knew him described William as a charismatic and passionate individual with a great sense of humor, inspiring those around him to pursue their dreams. As their online relationship developed over several months, their bond strengthened. They appeared perfectly suited for one another, sharing similar tastes in music, a love for live performances, and a comparable sense of humor. Friends who knew them observed that Anna and William complemented each other beautifully. William's caring disposition was evident through thoughtful gestures, such as sending Anna flowers even while separated by oceans. Anna and William's online chemistry was undeniable, yet they wished to confirm their connection in person. So in December 2016, they chose to elevate their relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to spend the Christmas holidays with William. However, she initially made a mistake and purchased a ticket to Portland, Maine instead of Portland, Oregon. Before realizing the error, she had already flown to Maine, but she remained determined to make it work. After correcting her flight arrangements, Anna finally arrived in Oregon. William picked her up from the airport, and they spent the following 10 days together. He took her on sightseeing trips, and they enjoyed activities such as visiting the seaside, playing in the snow, and cuddling by the fire. William also introduced her to his friends, and they celebrated New Year's Eve together, sharing a romantic kiss at midnight. It was the perfect Christmas experience for Anna. After a whirlwind 10-day visit, William proposed to Anna using his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. However, what Anna did not know was that William was leading a double life. During their time together, he had also been secretly seeing his 33-year-old landlady, Michelle Chavez, behind her back. William rented a room in Michelle's house, and it appeared he also held a special place in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 children, but this did not prevent her romantic involvement with William. Their affair had persisted for over a year when Anna, William's girlfriend, visited Michelle's home. Unbeknownst to Anna, she was meeting her rival, as Michelle was her boyfriend's landlady. Michelle displayed understanding when William brought Anna to her home, possibly thinking William would never leave her or believing Anna was insignificant, much like her own husband. Whatever the reason, Michelle did not reveal their secret. It was not until Michelle discovered the engagement ring that her husband's stance on the situation became clear to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Russia, unaware of the turmoil she had left behind. After posting a photo of her engagement ring on Facebook, the social media algorithm brought the post to Michelle's attention. Michelle's anger was not solely due to William's engagement to another woman. Michelle had planned to leave her husband to be with William, and as a symbol of her commitment, had removed her wedding ring and given it to him. However, she soon realized that the ring was identical to the engagement ring William had given to Anna. It turned out that William had given Anna Michelle's own wedding ring, which had been reused. Michelle confronted William about this, and he attempted to calm her, insisting that Anna meant nothing to him and promising to end their engagement on March 1, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna had packed her belongings, including her wedding dress, and had quit her job, prepared to begin a new life with William in another part of the world. Michelle was unhappy about this development. Anna's mother, Yelena, also had doubts about her daughter's hasty decision. She was unsure about William, whom Anna barely knew, and felt she was rushing into things. Anna, however, was certain she was in love and saw no reason to wait. Yelena finally released Michelle from her hold. Michelle, realizing Anna's visit was not a social call, grew furious. She demanded that William find another place to live, refusing to allow the engaged couple to remain under her roof. William complied, renting an apartment for himself and Anna. However, he continued to secretly see Michelle, sneaking out to visit her and assuring her of his commitment while downplaying Anna's importance. Michelle became increasingly concerned about William's deepening relationship with Anna, so she took action. She contacted Anna on Facebook, revealing the details of her ongoing affair with William. Anna reported the conversation to William, but he dismissed it as Michelle's jealousy. Anna believed him, and the couple decided to ignore Michelle's warnings and concentrate on their future together. They set a wedding date for March 23rd and planned a beachside ceremony. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach. However, the officiant did not show up. After waiting for what seemed like an eternity, they returned home. They planned to attempt the wedding again in April. On that same day, surveillance footage captured the couple buying food at a McDonald's drive-thru. Anna sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress. William had lied to her, claiming the officiant was sick. Despite claiming he did not love Anna, William had kept her convinced he was not invested in their relationship. Meanwhile, Michelle had grown weary of William's manipulation. On April 15th, Michelle issued an ultimatum to William: choose between her and Anna. She made it clear that if Anna was not gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action, build a snowman, a sinister phrase meaning to kill someone, and hide the body in a snowy area where it would never be discovered. After issuing her threat, Michelle lost contact with William and assumed he had chosen Anna over her. She left him voicemails expressing her feelings. On Sunday, April 16th, William called Michelle to inform her that he was single again, having just ended his tumultuous relationship with Anna, who was now returning to Russia. Coincidentally, William had struck a deer with his car and was waiting at the Ailey Martile store for repairs. He asked Michelle to meet him there. As it was Easter Sunday, Michelle was attending a family gathering, but she excused herself to see William. When she arrived, they reconnected with an intimate moment in William's car, reaffirming their strong bond. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in the forest. Initially, investigators could not identify her, as no identification was found with the body, and she had only been in the state for approximately a month. The crime scene lacked a murder weapon, but was scattered with trash. However, amidst the debris, a clear plastic bag drew their attention. Inside, they discovered a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The KFC receipt proved to be the critical clue in solving the case. It contained a date, time, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas. When questioned, Kevin stated that he was best friends with William and had been getting to know Anna. He also mentioned a tradition he shared with William of eating lunch at KFC every Friday. The receipt, as it turned out, was from a purchase made about a week before Kevin's questioning. The investigation into Anna's death uncovered William's deceitful conduct. In his interview, Kevin disclosed that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to clear his mind. However, William never returned the weapon. The police began to suspect William and Michelle after hearing Kevin's account. Following Anna's death, William's behavior grew increasingly unusual and suspicious. He withdrew money from Anna's bank account to pay off his debts, and was caught on camera purchasing cigars and Star Wars Legos at various stores. William also confided in Kevin that he was spending money recklessly as a way to cope with his emotions. Furthermore, he started researching time travel and even contacted strangers on WhatsApp, offering to trade his soul for the chance to go back in time. William wished to travel back to April 16th to prevent a situation caused by his best friend's mistake. On that day, however, William was seen crying in a store employee's arms, claiming his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He had moved back in with Michelle, but was later picked up by the police and questioned. The police asked William about his whereabouts on April 16th, and he stated he had been on a drive with Michelle. When asked about Anna, he denied having a romantic relationship with her, claiming they had only gone on 2 dates and he had ended things. According to William, their last interaction occurred in mid-March when Anna mistakenly posted their engagement on Facebook, causing conflict with Michelle. When questioned about the trash found near his late fiancée, or the woman he had dated, William admitted to littering but claimed it consisted only of KFC trash and a can from the general store, unrelated to Anna's death. Approximately 40 miles separated the ALP General Store from the logging road. However, investigators did not accept William's alibi. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators, quickly intensified the pressure by revealing that William's trash had been discovered near a murder victim at a different location. Initially, William reacted with surprise and heartbreak, feigning disbelief that he was being questioned about a murder. 2 days after Anna Repkina's body was discovered, her fiancé William Hargrove was arrested for her murder on April 19th. During the investigation, Michelle was also questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, the day Anna was killed. At first, Michelle adhered to a rehearsed alibi, claiming she and William had spent the day together, with William picking her up from her mother's house and going on a drive. However, Michelle later changed her story, admitting she had lied initially. She then stated that she and William had planned to meet, but he never called or showed up. When the police revealed that William was in custody for murder, Michelle's response was unexpectedly calm, saying only okay. The investigator pressed Michelle about her apparent lack of emotion, which eventually caused her to break down, and she tearfully explained that her initial calmness was due to being in shock. William Hargrove was indicted on charges of murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018. His trial began in October 2019, with the prosecution seeking the maximum penalties for each charge, while the defense argued for a more lenient sentence. William's defenders maintained his innocence and claimed that Melissa, the spurned lover, was the actual perpetrator. However, the prosecution presented a strong case against William, supported by evidence and motive. The evidence showed that William was torn between 2 lovers, with Anna pressuring him to make a choice. Records also showed William and Anna driving together in an alone car. On the day of Anna's murder, William's cell phone was tracked to the logging road at 4:30 p.m. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with his fingerprints being the only ones on the weapon. Despite denying any involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to shop and pay his car insurance, and was even filmed withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. The prosecution argued that William had driven Anna to the forest, removed her from the car, and then executed her with his shotgun. They claimed that William was faced with a choice between Anna and Michelle, which motivated his actions. In contrast, the defense argued their client was innocent. They suggested that Melissa was the actual perpetrator. A threat from Melissa to build a snowman with Anna, her cell phone found near the logging road, and Anna's cell phone discovered in Melissa's house suggested that Melissa had planned the crime. Melissa, who was not charged with any crimes, testified as a witness for the prosecution. She explained that she worked as a late-night cab driver and was married to an Oregon State University instructor, though their marriage was loveless and open. She met William at a bar where he worked and, with her husband's permission, began a romantic relationship with him. As their relationship grew, William rented a room in her house. When Anna entered the picture, Melissa did not feel threatened, due to her open relationship with William. Melissa explained that by her second visit, she could no longer tolerate the situation, especially after seeing her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although she had given William an ultimatum, she had no role in William's actions that harmed Anna. Melissa clarified that she never intended for Anna to be hurt or killed. She denied the defense's allegations, stating that the build-a-snowman threat was just a joke, a light-hearted family comment, even if extreme. She acknowledged that her cell phone had been found in the forest, but stated that William had driven her there. She did not know why or what he intended to do. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned, and as his partner, she naturally held on to it. Melissa's testimony lasted 14 hours, and she was not the only one. About 70 others testified, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some of Melissa's family members, and others. Throughout the case, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, particularly in her hometown in Oregon, where locals criticized and ostracized her. Michelle had reached a low point and attempted suicide, though fortunately she survived. The prosecutor praised Michelle's willingness to take responsibility, describing her actions as tough, even super tough. After a month of court proceedings, the judge asked the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a decision. Despite the defense's efforts, they could not find Michelle guilty of Anna's death. No physical evidence linked Michelle to the crime scene or the weapon, and she had a solid alibi, having celebrated Easter at her mother's house, with multiple witnesses confirming her presence. Meanwhile, William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence against him led to his conviction on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Anna's attorney announced plans to appeal the verdict. Notably, the jurors formed a strong bond during the trial. After the trial, they visited the logging trail where Anna's life was tragically ended to pay their respects. Anna will be remembered as a courageous young woman who left her home in Russia to build a new life in the United States. She was loving and openly shared her affection with others. She was cherished by many during her life, and her memory will continue to be loved and honored. Prosecutor Amy Matsuko stated. Moving on to the next case. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974, in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. As a single mother, she raised her son, Max Maxwell, after experiencing unsuccessful relationships in the past. Raising Max proved challenging for Carrie. Despite her profound love for her child, she battled depression, which resulted in a period where she remained in bed for a month. During this time, her mother, Nancy Rainey, cared for Max. Carrie's difficult relationship with Max's father and unstable living conditions contributed to her mental health struggles. At the age of 20, Carrie's difficulties led to a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. This condition causes severe mood swings ranging from euphoria, heightened productivity, and excessive friendliness to depression, bitterness, and feelings of helplessness. Although bipolar disorder greatly complicates daily life, Carrie's doctor discovered an effective treatment for her in the early 2000s. With this treatment, Carrie was able to manage her condition and live a relatively normal life. Whether Carrie wished to stabilize her personal life remains uncertain. On one hand, what woman doesn't dream of a suitable partner? On the other hand, why commit to someone who could bring worries and misfortunes? Carrie grew up in a loving family and maintained an active lifestyle. She played sports and aspired to become a doctor. However, her ambitions were cut short during her first medical practice when she fainted at the sight of blood. Choosing not to risk her health or the well-being of her patients, she pursued a career in programming instead. In the fall of 2012, Carrie received a job offer in Omaha with good prospects and decided to accept it. However, her son Max was in middle school and preferred to remain in familiar surroundings, so he stayed with his grandmother in Macedonia. According to Amy, a friend of Carrie's father, Carrie had a radiant smile that drew attention whenever she entered a room. It was likely this trait that caught Dave Kropa's eye when they met at an auto repair shop in November 2012. As Carrie showed him something inside her car, a Ford Explorer, Dave felt an instant attraction. Their first date occurred shortly thereafter, but their time together was interrupted by numerous calls and messages from a woman named Liz, who eventually came by Dave's apartment to retrieve something she had left there earlier. Dave informed Carrie about his past relationship with Liz, whom he had met on a dating site 6 months earlier. They had been together for a while, but he ended things because she was extremely clingy. Carrie was understanding and unfazed by Liz's presence in Dave's apartment, acknowledging that everyone has past relationships that can resurface. 2 weeks after moving in, Carrie began dating Dave. They had discussed their expectations beforehand and agreed on a brief, casual affair. Liz, whose full name is Shawnanna Elizabeth Govlier, was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Dave and Liz had children around the same age. However, Dave felt Liz was not a suitable long-term partner due to her limited education and lack of shared interests. Their relationship centered more on physical intimacy than meaningful conversations. Over time, Liz became increasingly interested in Dave's activities when she was not present, particularly regarding who he was seeing. However, Dave consistently reminded her that they were in an open relationship, implying she should not be concerned about his interactions with others. He also reassured her that she had the freedom to date other men if she chose to do so. Despite Dave's openness, Liz could not overcome her feelings of dissatisfaction and jealousy, particularly toward Dave's children and their mother, Amy. She struggled to comprehend the close bond that endured between Dave and Amy even after their breakup. Consequently, Liz's behavior grew increasingly possessive, prompting Dave to create distance between them. It was during this period of separation that Carrie entered Dave's life. Carrie was not only beautiful but also stylish, intelligent, and an excellent conversationalist. Dave found himself lost in conversation with her for hours, feeling an undeniable connection as they shared common interests and perspectives. Liz noticed that Dave was becoming progressively distant, so she attempted to rekindle their connection by sending messages, emails, and making phone calls. However, he had no intention of ceasing his interactions with Carrie or anyone else on her account. Meanwhile, Carrie and Dave were spending more nights together, which suited Carrie's work schedule and was enjoyable for Dave. Carrie appeared to be taking things lightly, focusing on having fun and not seeking anything serious. In December 2015, Liz was shot and non-fatally wounded, prompting her to suspect who might be responsible and realize she needed to take action. 2 years earlier, on November 13, 2012, Carrie had kissed Dave goodbye before he left for work, expecting to see him later. However, that would be the final time they saw each other. At 9:45 a.m. that morning, Dave received a surprising text message from Carrie stating she wanted to move in with him permanently. Dave found this message disturbing as they had previously discussed and agreed not to rush into a relationship, being content with their current situation. Dave replied that he wasn't ready for such a change, but Carrie's response was unpleasant and profane. He was shocked to find that all of Carrie's belongings were gone from the apartment. This led him to believe she had left him for good. That same day, Carrie also removed him as a friend on Facebook, which seemed to conclude the matter. However, Dave began receiving multiple rude texts and emails from Carrie daily, containing curses and threats to ruin his life. Carrie sent a large number of these messages, all of which were aggressive. Uncharacteristically, she also stopped showing up for work, despite being known for her punctuality. The strange messages were not only directed at Dave, but also at her mother and 15-year-old son, Max. She claimed to have found a job in Kansas and planned to take Max with her, but wanted to be alone for the time being due to concerns over her failed romance. In May 2013, Carrie posted on Facebook that she had left of her own free will and was exhausted by criticism. She was not missing her old life, but was not ready to return home. Carrie asserted her independence as a grown woman, stating she had the right to leave home if she chose. She apologized for hurting everyone by leaving abruptly. However, as time passed, Carrie failed to reappear. Her mother grew increasingly worried when Carrie missed important family events, including her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other celebrations. The final indication that something was seriously wrong came when Carrie missed her father's funeral. Liz began receiving messages from Carrie, which were insulting, humiliating, and even threatening. Carrie warned Liz to stay away from Dave. Confounded by Carrie's behavior, Liz reached out to Dave, who revealed he was experiencing a similar situation. Carrie was sending him messages and emails, accusing him of wrongdoing, calling him a liar, and vowing revenge for the pain he allegedly caused her. The messages were sometimes ominous, with Carrie claiming to know what Dave was doing at that moment. This shared experience brought Dave and Liz closer together, but also caused Dave to feel guiltier about the trouble he had caused. The messages from Carrie became increasingly menacing and were filled with grammatical errors and illogical content. This was unusual, as Carrie's mother stated that her daughter had always been a calm person who wrote coherent and well-structured letters and documents. Carrie was known to be meticulous about spelling and writing style. It is possible that she had experienced even more severe mental health issues. Her actions appeared to be driven entirely by her uncontrolled mental state. A key indicator of dissociative identity disorder, also known as split personality, is the presence of separate, simultaneous self-consciousness in each ego, each possessing its own distinct memories, thoughts, behaviors, and tendencies toward specific actions. This might account for Carrie's unusual behavior and altered writing style. Everything indicated she was unstable, which is why the police did not initially consider her missing, instead concentrating on halting the pursuit of Liz and Dave. They attempted to track Carrie's cell phone, but were unsuccessful due to blocked signals. Meanwhile, Liz and Dave continued receiving hundreds of texts and emails, sometimes simultaneously receiving hostile messages while together. Dave and Liz continued dating, but he felt uneasy around her as she became increasingly demanding. Despite claiming to be comfortable with their no-commitment arrangement, Liz's behavior suggested otherwise. Each time Dave tried to end things with Liz, Carrie would begin texting him, bonding over their shared sense of victimization. This commonality drew Dave and Carrie closer, causing them to reunite repeatedly. In January 2013, a missing car was unexpectedly discovered in Dave's front yard. However, the fingerprints on the steering wheel did not match Carrie's, and the vehicle displayed no suspicious signs. The police eventually returned the car to Carrie's parents. Carrie continued messaging Liz and Dave, escalating her behavior by sending pictures of their children and threatening to harm them unless Dave ceased contact with Liz. Over time, Carrie's stalking persisted, and Liz's jealousy intensified, frustrating Dave. He grew exhausted by the events unfolding in his life, and eventually summoned the strength to end his relationship with Liz. This decision occurred shortly after a tragic incident in August 2013, when Liz reported a fire at her home that killed all her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz suspected Carrie was responsible, citing repeated threats sent via texts and emails. The incident marked a major turning point in the missing person case of Carrie Farver, leading to her placement on a federal wanted list. Tens of thousands of messages were meticulously examined. Law enforcement seized cell phones from Dave and Liz, believing Dave was also at risk. Someone had vandalized the auto repair shop where he worked and thrown a brick through a window. It appeared that Carrie's anger was directed at anyone connected to Dave. Consequently, Amy Flora, Fave's ex-wife, began receiving threatening messages from Carrie. As Dave spent time with his children, he also interacted with Amy regularly. The police were puzzled as to why Carrie, who had dated Dave for less than 2 weeks, was now stalking Dave and his ex-wife. Investigators decided to focus on Dave Kuppa, as Carrie's disappearance raised numerous questions that needed answers. It was a mystery that did not add up. Carrie Farver's family was also relentlessly searching for her, exploring every possible lead to locate her. Their efforts eventually bore fruit in the spring of 2015, when detectives Ryan Avis and Jim Doty took on the case. Unfortunately, they discovered no evidence that Carrie was still alive. One detective shared their thoughts with ABC News. "It is unusual for adults to suddenly vanish without using any money. No one saw or heard from her, which makes no sense. She had a good income and a nice home. I have come to believe that I have no proof she is alive." With assistance from a digital forensics expert, the detectives analyzed data from Kropa and Gore's phones from 2013. They discovered that Carrie had sent over 50,000 texts and 15,000 emails to Dave in just 3 years. Whoever was impersonating Carrie became increasingly sophisticated, attempting to conceal their IP address and true identity. Someone with expertise in computer programs appeared to be behind the strange events. In December 2015, Liz Gart contacted the police once again, this time reporting that she had been shot in the leg on her own doorstep. She claimed that her attacker was Amy Flora, not Carrie. Coincidentally, Dave was missing a gun to which Amy may have had access. This new development raised suspicions that Amy could be involved in Carrie's disappearance. The investigation uncovered a lead suggesting Amy's possible motive. She may have been seeking revenge against women connected to Dave Kropa. Amy's relationship with Dave had been complicated, and the presence of other women in his life might have prevented them from reuniting. The police promptly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, she had a solid alibi. Multiple witnesses confirmed that she was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, so no arrest was made. The investigation grew increasingly perplexing. New details emerged from the analysis of Liz's cell phone data. Investigators discovered fake email addresses using variations of Farver's name and an app used to schedule messages. This finding explained how Liz and Dave received simultaneous messages from Carrie. The investigation led to suspicion of Liz Govlier, which intensified when her fingerprint matched those found on Carey's car steering wheel. It became clear who the culprit was, and the priority shifted to preventing further harm. To catch Liz off guard, detectives devised a plan to create a false narrative, pretending to still consider Amy the prime suspect, aiming to prevent Liz from fleeing or destroying evidence. Liz fell for the trap. She was thrilled at the opportunity to eliminate another rival who threatened her relationship with Dave. Soon after, Liz Govlier provided the police with an email supposedly written by Amy. The email contained a confession to kidnapping Carey, along with specific details about the crime. According to the confession, Carey had been stabbed in the stomach or chest area before her body was disposed of. The email also revealed information about Carey's car and home that had not been publicly disclosed. An investigative spokeswoman stated that Liz gave detectives information that only someone intimately involved in the crime could have known. In doing so, she inadvertently implicated herself in Carey Farver's murder. The letter indicated that the crime occurred in a car, prompting authorities to re-examine the victim's vehicle. Upon removing the seat covers and fabric, specialists discovered a bloodstain belonging to Carey Farver. Liz had managed to send messages posing as Carey without raising suspicion, but the method remained unclear. Reports indicated that Liz Govlier led a double life, dating both Dave and a man named Garrett. Notably, Garrett's IP address was linked to messages sent under Carey's name. When questioned, Garrett revealed that he had been in a long-term relationship with Liz. Out of kindness, Garrett had invited Liz to move in with him and his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and deteriorated significantly once they started living together. Garrett often took care of Liz's children while she isolated herself in her room or left the house. He was shocked by what the police told him. Investigators discovered that Liz spent 40 to 50 hours a week pretending to be a missing woman. Although her room was messy, no significant evidence was found there. However, authorities did find several cell phones and electronic devices at her last residence. In late December 2016, Shawnanna Liz was charged with first-degree murder. The county prosecutor commented on the complexity of the investigation, stating that while most murders are dark, this crime was particularly bizarre. It would require considerable convincing to make someone believe it truly happened. Liz's actions, including allowing her dog to die in a fire she set herself and shooting herself in the thigh, were attempts to deflect suspicion from herself. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, believed the case against her was weak since it relied largely on circumstantial evidence. Key pieces of evidence were missing, including Carey's body and the crime weapon, and Liz had not confessed to the crime. In fact, there was no conclusive proof that Carey was even dead. The defense team requested a mistrial, which would allow a judge to determine the extent of Shawnanna's culpability. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of complex electronic evidence, along with physical evidence. They argued that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carey's car supported the theory that she had been stabbed. Investigators also discovered a direct link between Shawnanna and Carey's murder by analyzing a memory card that Shawnanna had used around the time Carey went missing. The memory card, found in a tablet stored at Dave's residence, contained deleted images. It was clear that the foot belonged to a person who had been deceased for several years. Notably, Carey had a similar tattoo among her distinguishing features. Her mother later confirmed that the tattoo indeed belonged to Carey. The photo solidified the conviction of Shawnanna Liz as a predator. The judge ruled her guilty of first-degree murder and imposed a life sentence without parole, stating that Carey Farver did not disappear by choice but was tragically murdered. Authorities suspect that Shawnanna murdered Carey, allowed her body to decompose, and then burned the remains to destroy all evidence. Motivated by jealousy, she sought to eliminate her rival. After disposing of Carey, Shawnanna took her cell phone and used it to send messages that would make Farver appear unstable and help win back Dave's favor. When this plan succeeded, Shawnanna attempted to eliminate Amy as well, but she became too entangled in her own scheme and ultimately fell into her own trap. Shawnanna, also known as Liz, was also found guilty of arson for setting fire to her own home in August 2013 and attempting to blame it on Carey. The fire destroyed the house and killed pets, resulting in an additional 20-year prison sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women, despite maintaining her innocence. Dave revealed that he received thousands of emails and text messages signed by Carrie over the years. However, he claimed that he never noticed Carrie stalking him during their relationship, which contrasts sharply with his experience with Shawnana. So, what became of Carrie's son, Maxwell Farver? According to his LinkedIn profile, he followed in his mother's footsteps and became a computer programmer. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science, and is now married. Although it is unlikely he has forgotten the past, he may have found some peace with his new family. As for Dave Kropa, he now leads a private life away from the public eye. He does not maintain a public account on any social media platform. This disturbing crime story serves as a harsh reminder of the complexities and manipulations that can occur in human relationships. It underscores how vulnerable we can be in our own surroundings, unaware of the true nature of those around us. Moving on to the next case. Case of Cassie Farrington. Cassie was born on December 22, 1990, in the state of Virginia. She was the second child out of four born to Chuck and Darlene Brooks. Cassie performed very well academically and was an engaged student. She became a member of the National Honor Society and took part in sports activities. Her original ambition was to follow a career path in medicine. However, when Cassie reached the age of 16, her life changed dramatically. She became pregnant, which caused her to alter her plans and goals for the future. Several significant changes in Cassie's life took place during the following month. Cassie completed high school, gave birth to a child, married Bradley Farrington, and moved out of her parents' home, all within a very short time frame of just 1 month. Several years afterward, she welcomed another child. But as time passed, her family relationships began to break down. In the end, the marriage eventually resulted in divorce. Even so, she pushed forward, raising her 2 young children in Silver City, a small town with a population of roughly 10,000 people. At the age of 22, she was employed as a nurse at the local hospital and rented a place from a co-worker. When she turned 23, Cassie began a new relationship with a man named David Barry. He quickly formed a bond with her children, and she felt thankful for how well things were going. Instead of moving too quickly, they concentrated on creating a life together as a family unit. Cassie shared with her loved ones and co-workers that David had brought joy to both her and her children, and she felt hopeful that this new relationship would provide the peace and happiness she had been lacking after her earlier failed marriage. On March 24, 2014, Cassie called her parents after completing her night shift at Silver City Hospital. They spoke for a few minutes, during which she explained her plan to drive home, collect her children, and take them to school. After that, she planned to go back home and rest for a couple of hours before picking her children up from school later that same day. School staff contacted Cassie's parents when they were unable to reach her. Her children had finished their school day, but Cassie had not arrived to pick them up. Cassie's mother attempted to call her, but there was no response. Believing that Cassie might have overslept following a night shift, her mother asked Cheryl, her landlord, to check whether Cassie was home and if she was all right. Cheryl went to the house and knocked on the door, but no one responded. She then walked around the house and looked through the window of the back door, where she noticed water flowing from the bathroom into the kitchen. She knocked more forcefully on the door and called out Cassie's name, but still received no answer. Using her own key, Cheryl unlocked the door and went inside the house. The sound of running water was louder and clearer. As she crossed the wet floor toward the bathroom, Cheryl called Cassie's name, her voice trembling slightly. That was when she saw Cassie. Cheryl, who was both a co-worker and a friend of Cassie's, found her lifeless body in the overflowing bathtub. Cassie was lying face down, dressed in a house robe, as water continued to spill out. Although Cheryl had first aid training, she realized that Cassie had been dead for several hours because rigor mortis had already begun, making CPR impossible. Cheryl immediately called 911 to report what had happened. She then delivered the heartbreaking news to Cassie's parents by phone, informing them of their daughter's death. While waiting for paramedics and police to arrive, Cheryl took a moment to look around the house. She observed that the second bathroom, located in another part of the home, also had a faucet left on with water running. However, the tub there had an overflow protection system, so the extra water was not spilling onto the floor but draining away instead. Cheryl also noticed that the towel rack in the bathroom had been ripped from the wall and was lying on the floor. When they received the news, Chuck and Darlene, Cassie's parents, were overwhelmed with grief. They immediately stopped what they were doing and traveled from Arizona to Silver City. Within just a few hours, they arrived at the home where their daughter's body had been discovered. The police were already present at the scene, examining the circumstances surrounding Cassie's death. Officers noted that there were no signs of forced entry into the home, as all the locks remained secured. The windows were shut, and the glass was unbroken. In addition, valuables inside the house were undisturbed, making robbery an unlikely motive. The local sheriff questioned Chuck and Darlene, asking whether Cassie had intended to take her own life, and if she had any reason to do so. Chuck and Darlene strongly rejected this idea and insisted there was no possibility Cassie would have done that. The police chief repeatedly told Cassie's parents that she had most likely committed suicide, as though he were trying to persuade them to accept that conclusion. However, Cassie's parents felt the police investigation was hurried and unclear. Typically, a crime scene is carefully examined and investigated, a process that can take several days. In Cassie's situation, the police left the scene only a few hours after her body was discovered. They also informed Cheryl that she was permitted to enter and use the house. This deeply concerned Cassie's parents, and they decided to examine the house themselves. When they found water still remaining in the bathtub, they drained it and discovered black streaks along the sides of the tub that looked like marks made by rubber-soled shoes. They also located Cassie's glasses, a hairband, and a coat hanger scattered in different areas on the floor. Cassie's parents became even more suspicious when the police failed to search the house for fingerprints. They believed the authorities might be attempting to close the case quickly without conducting a thorough investigation. It was not until they contacted the district attorney's office that the police appeared to make a greater effort. However, they were still unable to resolve the case because of the medical examiner's findings. The autopsy report revealed that Cassie had multiple bruises on her body, especially around her neck. The examiner determined that her death was a homicide. Despite this, the investigation was hindered because the property owner had cleaned and carried out some repairs after the incident. This meant the original crime scene had been altered, which could affect the progress of the investigation. As the months passed, Cassie's parents were met with silence from the police. The police did look into David Berry, a man Cassie had been seen with before her death, but he was quickly eliminated as a suspect due to a solid alibi. As time went on, Cassie's parents became increasingly frustrated with the local police, feeling they were not doing enough to solve the case. Their concerns prompted Chuck and Darlene to request a meeting with the chief district attorney to express their dissatisfaction with how the investigation was being handled, particularly regarding Detective Jose Sanchez. After reviewing the case file, the district attorney agreed with the parents and determined that Jose had made numerous mistakes. As a result, Jose was removed from the case, and a more experienced detective was assigned. From the beginning, Cassie's family and friends suspected her ex-husband, Bradley Farrington, was responsible for her death. At the time Cassie died, she and Bradley were involved in an intense custody battle over their children. Bradley stood to benefit the most from Cassie's death because he would gain custody of the children. Bradley Farrington was a former Silver City police officer who had retired only a few months before Cassie's death, and his positive relationship with investigators prevented him from being considered a suspect. However, Bradley had a clear motive for the crime and possessed the knowledge needed to destroy evidence. He was well aware of police procedures and how to conceal his actions. For instance, the bath water would wash away any remaining DNA evidence on the body and also remove shoe prints from the floor. Because Cassie was familiar with Bradley, it is likely she would have opened the door for him. Unfortunately, due to the poor handling of the investigation by the local police, any evidence connecting Bradley to the crime scene was lost and could not be recovered. The only remaining way to hold Bradley accountable would be through eyewitness testimony. Cassie had told her parents that she and her family were abused by Bradley and that he often behaved arrogantly because he was a police officer. Cassie lived in constant fear, and because Bradley's friends were police officers, she could not turn to them for help. She had also confided in co-workers about Bradley's threats, including the chilling warning that he would make her disappear without a trace. Tragically, Cassie's life was ended prematurely, and she was discovered dead on March 24, 2014. 19 months later, on October 23, 2015, 28-year-old Bradley Farrington was taken into custody in connection with Cassie's death. Although Bradley had been a suspect, the local police had mishandled evidence, leaving no proof that directly tied him to the crime. Consequently, the judge ruled that previously recorded statements from Cassie could be admitted as testimony during the trial. Throughout the trial, multiple witnesses came forward, including Cassie's parents, friends, and co-workers, to whom she had confided about the abuse she suffered at the hands of Bradley. Among the notable witnesses was Dr. Michael Hunter, a highly respected forensic expert from San Francisco. With more than 20 years of experience, Dr. Hunter presented the jury with autopsy photographs and concluded that Cassie had likely died from strangulation. She had sustained injuries to her neck, which supported this conclusion. Following the issuance of a warrant for Bradley's arrest, Jose Sanchez, who had originally handled the case, appeared in court. Jose testified that he had never considered Bradley Farrington a suspect because he saw no reason to do so, and also stated that no fingerprints of Bradley were found at Cassie's residence. Jose explained that the crime scene was unusually clean and believed it had been cleaned after the crime occurred, which accounted for the absence of fingerprints. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Bradley Farrington guilty on September 7th. In 2018, Bradley was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He later filed an appeal with the New Mexico Supreme Court in 2020. In his appeal, Bradley challenged his conviction, arguing that the trial court had erred in allowing Cassie's co-workers, friends, and family members to testify during the trial. However, the state's highest court determined that sufficient evidence existed to uphold Bradley's conviction and denied his appeal. Moving on to the next case. The case of Chauhan family. Amarjeet Chauhan was the owner of Chiba Freight, a successful fruit import company located near Heathrow Airport. To people around him, Amarjeet seemed to be a dedicated family man and a compassionate employer, admired by his employees, and enjoying a content life with his wife and 2 young children. Amarjeet regarded his workers as part of his extended family. To express his gratitude to them during the company's busiest periods, he frequently treated them to pizza and drinks. He also upheld a relaxed and approachable management style, which gained him widespread respect. Amarjeet's staff worried about the future of the company if he were to relocate to India, a topic that repeatedly came up in discussions with his wife, Nancy. She wished that Amarjeet, who was 46 years old, would soon be able to retire, enabling them to spend more time with their children. Nancy regularly spoke to her husband about her wish to return to India. As time passed, Amarjeet started to take Nancy's desire seriously and began considering selling their business so they could move back to their hometown. This plan might have succeeded if Amarjeet Chauhan's ownership of Chiba Freight had not encountered difficulties. However, someone had set their sights on Amarjeet's company and wanted to take control of it without putting in any money. In January 2003, Kenneth, who had recently been released from prison, sought employment at Chiba Freight. Amarjeet, the company's owner, who had also experienced his own legal troubles related to tax evasion, could relate to Kenneth's situation. Understanding how difficult it could be for people to find work after leaving prison, Amarjeet was willing to give Kenneth an opportunity, which aligned with his reputation for being understanding and easygoing. Amarjeet chose to give Kenneth a second chance by employing him as a driver. Kenneth proved to be a hard-working employee, willing to take on any task, and carried out his responsibilities exceptionally well. Kenneth was usually more than just a driver. However, in the past, he had been an experienced smuggler known as Captain Cash. By the late 1990s, Kenneth had established a reputation as a seasoned criminal, operating several freight companies that acted as fronts to conceal his true business of smuggling illegal drugs into the UK. He had risen in London's criminal underworld and associated with powerful figures in organized crime. Despite his unassuming appearance, Kenneth lived a lavish lifestyle, viewing himself as a wealthy socialite and a well-known figure in the international underworld. In 1997, at the height of his illegal activities, Kenneth met Belinda Bruin, a socialite, at a high-end London bar. He showcased his wealth, driving a Mercedes and spoiling her with costly gifts. She perceived him as polished and charismatic, though somewhat rough around the edges. He was a man who meticulously displayed his luxury watches and had no hesitation in showing off his riches. Frequently seen carrying a briefcase filled with cash, Kenneth believed this extravagant way of living would enhance his social status. Unknown to her, Belinda Bruin was drawn into Kenneth's world of crime and deceit. Kenneth became deeply infatuated with Belinda. He called and emailed her constantly, declaring his feelings as though he were a love-struck teenager. Despite the fact that they shared only a superficial relationship, Kenneth told others that Belinda was his girlfriend, which left Belinda confused. Kenneth was arrested on June 17, 1998, while in possession of 25 kilograms of a white substance, placing him at risk of receiving a prison sentence of up to 18 years. However, Kenneth chose to cooperate with the authorities, and his testimony assisted in convicting 12 major criminals. As a result, his own sentence was greatly reduced. For years later, when Kenneth was released from prison, he found himself with nothing, no friends, no money, and his assets had been confiscated. Faced with these difficulties, he moved into a small house with his father, determined to find a way to reclaim his lost wealth and status. Kenneth, eager to re-enter the illegal drug trade, identified Amarjeet Chauhan's business, Chiba Freight, as the ideal launching point for his return. He methodically crafted a plan to take over the company, executing it with such precision that nobody became suspicious. After gaining a position within the firm, Kenneth discovered through co-workers that Amarjeet was thinking about selling Chiba Freight in order to move overseas. Taking advantage of this moment, Kenneth approached Amarjeet with a fabricated story, presenting an offer valued at $4 million to capture his interest. While Amarjeet considered the offer, Kenneth pressed forward with his scheme, intending to use Chiba Freight for purposes beyond legitimate business. At the same time, Kenneth also turned his attention back to Belinda, who had relocated to Devon to get away from him while he was incarcerated. He contacted her again with a business proposition, aware that she was facing financial difficulties. After her husband left, she was handling all responsibilities by herself, and it was becoming harder for her to afford her home, the mortgage, and the expensive fees for sending her children to a private school. When she replied, Kenneth told her about his plan to take control of Chiba Freight and proposed that she join the company as a director. Even though she had no experience, he offered her a salary of $54,000 for working just 2 days a week, totaling $68,000 per year. Belinda seized the opportunity and negotiated a higher salary of $72,000, nearly $9,000 more, which Kenneth accepted without hesitation. Kenneth began visiting Belinda at her countryside home in Devon under the pretense of discussing employment matters. To justify these visits, he invented excuses, such as needing her signature on paperwork or assistance with documents. However, Kenneth's true interest focused on the land surrounding Belinda's property, something that soon became evident. He started raising concerns with Belinda about the state of the path leading to the house, proposing several improvements. These suggestions included cutting down certain trees, constructing a wall with electric gates, and installing a drainage system. Initially, it appeared that Kenneth was driven by a desire to enhance the property for Belinda's benefit. But this may not have been his real motive. In February, Amarjeet made an important decision about the future of his business. He decided to meet with potential buyers to discuss a possible sale. Before departing, Amarjeet told his employees that he would be visiting Stonehenge, but provided no additional details. He also promised to keep them personally informed about the progress of the company's sale. Sadly, this meeting turned out to be the last time his employees saw him, and his unexplained disappearance quickly became a source of worry. On a Monday morning, the staff of Chiba Freight assembled together, only to be confronted with a startling announcement. Kenneth unexpectedly introduced Belinda as the company's new owner, surprising everyone and prompting numerous questions. The employees were left wondering what had happened to Amarjeet, why he had not said goodbye, and what lay ahead for the company. Then Kenneth produced a letter that he claimed came from Amarjeet. According to the letter, Amarjeet had chosen to sell the company because of poor health and was moving abroad with his family. Notably, the staff confirmed that the signature on the letter belonged to Amarjeet. The company's success and increase in orders kept the team too occupied to dwell on what the future might bring. As a result, they stopped talking about their worries and concentrated on their duties. Belinda was assigned a desk and a computer in the office, and began reviewing the company's finances as directed by Kenneth. However, she felt unwell on her second day and chose to leave for her home in Devon without waiting for Kenneth's permission. When she arrived, She was stunned to find an old, run-down Jaguar parked by the road and two men, William Hornsey von Peter Rees, who were linked to Kenneth, digging a drainage trench on her property. This unexpected discovery made her feel extremely uneasy. Belinda confronted Kenneth as soon as he reached her property, expressing her irritation and anger over the unauthorized excavation work he had carried out. She told him she did not need a drainage ditch, but Kenneth claimed he had done it simply to surprise her and reassured her that everything would be taken care of by the summer. However, their plans were disrupted when the Metropolitan Police began a new investigation into the situation. In 2003, Kenneth, who had previously been convicted of drug trafficking, was rebuilding his lavish lifestyle. After Amarjeet, the former owner of Chiba Freight, disappeared, Kenneth took control of the company, using it as a front for his smuggling operation. For 5 years, Kenneth had secretly admired Belinda, and now that she was involved in his operation, it appeared that all his dreams were coming true. But the foundation of his empire was about to be revealed. Ankur Verma, a journalist based in New Zealand, was eagerly anticipating a reunion with his 25-year-old sister, Nancy, who lived in London with her husband, Amarjeet Chauhan, and their 2 young children. This visit was particularly meaningful, as Ankur and Nancy had not seen each other for 9 years. Ankur often spoke with Nancy and their mother to talk about activities and plan his upcoming visit. However, on February 15, 2003, Ankur attempted to contact Nancy and his mother, but neither responded. At first, he assumed they might be traveling, but as the days went by without any reply, Ankur became increasingly worried. This was unusual because they had not mentioned any travel plans to him, and his visit was only 5 days away. Worried about his family's safety, Ankur contacted the Metropolitan Police for assistance. When police from Scotland Yard visited the family's home, they found it empty. Neighbors and co-workers speculated that the family might have returned to their home country, India. However, further updates from officers at Scotland Yard heightened Ankur's anxiety for his sister, mother, and nephews. His concern turned into fear, prompting him to decide to travel to the UK to personally investigate his family's disappearance. Upon arriving in London, Ankur felt alone in an unfamiliar city. He went to the Chauhan home in Hounslow, expecting a warm welcome. Instead, he was shocked by a scene that left him in complete disbelief. At first glance, the house appeared normal, as though the family had only stepped out briefly. But the reality was far different. Closer examination showed that the family had been gone for weeks. The laundry was still in the washing machine. Children's toys and baby bottles with leftover food were scattered across the floor and kitchen counter, and food had spoiled. It looked as if someone had been interrupted in the middle of washing dishes. While clothes and suitcases were neatly put away, personal items were scattered throughout the 3-bedroom house. The refrigerator still contained food. But what devastated Ankur the most was finding his mother's treasured prayer book, a possession she always kept close and never left behind. Ankur was confused and deeply concerned about his sister's family, who had 2 young children, vanishing without any trace. It seemed improbable that they had left their home by choice. Ankur persuaded the authorities to begin an investigation. A group of experienced detectives from the Serious Crime Division took charge of the case. As time passed, Ankur lost hope of ever being reunited with his family, and their future plans would no longer be realized. A large-scale search was launched to locate the family of Amarjeet Chauhan. The lead detective decided to question the person who last saw Amarjeet on the day he vanished. Kenneth, a former inmate with suspicious behavior, became the main suspect. Kenneth attempted to convince the police that Amarjeet was not a reliable man and that his financial problems had driven him to flee on his own. Kenneth also informed the police that Amarjeet probably wanted to dispose of his business and was likely already in another country by that time. However, investigators did not accept Kenneth's explanation. They used advanced forensic methods to trace the movements of Kenneth's and Amarjeet's mobile phones on the day Amarjeet vanished. The investigation initially placed Amarjeet's phone at his home, after which it traveled to Stonehenge, where a business meeting had been arranged. It was at Stonehenge that Kenneth's phone connected with Amarjeet's phone. After that, both phones were traced moving toward Devon. The detectives' only lead was that Belinda Bruin, the new head of Chiba Freight, lived in Devon, so they decided to visit her. However, when the police discussed plans to search Belinda's land, her partner, Kenneth, stepped in. He was furious and tried to persuade her not to permit the search, suggesting instead that they meet somewhere else. Belinda refused to give in. Meanwhile, Kenneth's associate, William Hornsey, contacted the lead detective and claimed that he had recently spoken with Umerjeet. He stated that Umerjeet was supposedly still in Britain. The authorities agreed to meet in Newport, Wales, near the passport agency, hoping to use this chance to uncover the truth behind Umerjeet's disappearance. The authorities chose to cancel their plan to search Belinda's land, as they needed to confirm in person that Umerjeet was truly safe in order to close the investigation. However, before the planned meeting at the passport agency on Monday, 3 men, Kenneth, William, and Peter, made an unexpected visit to Belinda's estate over the weekend, which surprised her. While there, they noticed a damaged path near the stable and decided to repair it with gravel. When a digger was later delivered to her property, she took her children into the city, leaving the 3 men behind to fix the road. 2 days later, detectives went to the arranged location to meet Umerjeet. When they arrived, they saw Hornsey and Kenneth's vehicle appear, stop briefly, and then drive away, as if the meeting had been called off. Kenneth returned to work at Chiba Freight, and the detectives decided to question Belinda once more. Before this, Kenneth had warned her not to tell the police about the work he had carried out on her land. However, Belinda found his warning odd and chose to inform the investigators about it. She explained that some of Kenneth's associates had entered her farm without permission and dug a drainage trench, even though she had not requested it. Belinda had unknowingly provided significant help to the police. The detectives quickly traveled to Devon, where they carried out excavations and extensive forensic testing with the assistance of specialists. They searched Belinda's land for 5 days, believing they would uncover the remains of Umerjeet and his family. However, nothing was found. After searching for more than 2 months, in April 2003, the police realized that they had been looking in the wrong place. In the well-known British seaside town of Bournemouth, Dorset, along the English Channel, a father and son, Dave and Carl, had planned an evening canoe trip. The sea was calm, the breeze was refreshing, and the weather was ideal for a relaxed paddle. As they moved through the water, they noticed something large floating in the distance. As they got closer, they realized it was a badly decomposed body, severely bloated from being in the water for a long time, making it difficult to identify the person. Carl quickly paddled back to shore to notify the authorities, while his father, Dave, remained with the body. Dave was left alone waiting in the darkness for nearly 3 hours as he waited for help to arrive. This terrifying experience would remain permanently etched in their memories. The body was later transported to a morgue in Bournemouth, but it took nearly a week to identify it. The deceased was Umerjeet Chauhan, a missing businessman who had suffered severe head injuries and had his mouth taped shut. The autopsy revealed that he most likely died from head trauma and suffocation. His clothing was removed for forensic testing. Meanwhile, police searched for additional clues 62 meters away in Belinda's field and made a major discovery, including a pile of burned clothing, jewelry, and strands of hair that were later confirmed to belong to Umerjeet, along with pieces of children's clothing. Early investigations suggested that a family of 5 might have been buried at the location. The once private property in Devon, owned by Belinda, had secretly been used as a burial site for the Umerjeet Chauhan family. When police became suspicious, the bodies were exhumed and transported by boat to the middle of Bournemouth Bay, where they were dumped into the sea. Until a body was discovered, the staff at Chiba Freight clung to the hope that their employer might return someday, even if he had sold the business, as they expected him to say goodbye or visit in the future. However, all hope was destroyed when the drowned man was confirmed to be Umerjeet. The situation worsened as concern grew for the remaining members of the family. Nancy was only 25 years old, and their children were just infants. The idea that someone could end so many innocent lives was horrifying, yet all evidence tragically pointed in that direction. The excavation site was far too large to conceal only one body. A much smaller area would have been sufficient to hide a single person. Furthermore, the simultaneous disappearance of Umerjeet, along with Nancy, mother-in-law Chiranjit, and the children, Ravinder and Navinder, suggested a tragic conclusion. The investigation became a high-priority case due to the seriousness of the crimes. Kenneth became the primary suspect, but he and his accomplice, William, had vanished. Initial reports indicated that Kenneth and William had fled to Europe, leaving their associate Peter Rees, a 39-year-old, overwhelmed with guilt over his involvement. He unexpectedly confessed to a stranger he had just met about the circumstances surrounding the tragic end of the Umerjeet family. His confession was likely motivated by fear of being blamed entirely, as he could not believe that his accomplice Kenneth would harm two innocent children. The stranger reported this information to authorities, and Peter was arrested 12 days later. However, once in custody, Peter remained silent during police questioning, leaving the location and fate of the Emerjaith Chauhan family unknown. 3 weeks after the discovery of the Emerjaith body, another body was found in the Solent, a section of the English Channel. Anchor was asked to identify the remains, which he recognized as those of his older sister, Nancy, despite the advanced decomposition. The main suspects were eventually captured. Kenneth was arrested in Belgium after 2 months on the run, while William surrendered 6 weeks later. However, even with all 3 suspects in custody, they refused to cooperate with investigators. Despite the arrests, the case remained unsolved because 3 members of the Chauhan family were still missing and there were no eyewitnesses to their murders. The investigation now required undeniable evidence to move forward. The detectives were unaware that Emerjaith had left behind a crucial piece of evidence. In April 2005, the longest criminal trial in British history began, with prosecutors aiming to prove that Kenneth, William, and Peter were responsible for the kidnapping and murder of the Chauhan family. Over the course of the 10-month trial, more than 4,500 pieces of physical evidence were examined. However, the analysis of phone communications formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Amarjeet had initially met with Kenneth to discuss selling the company, but he was kidnapped and held captive at Kenneth's home. There, he was forced to sign documents that made it appear to his employees that he had sold the business and moved abroad. A crucial piece of evidence surfaced when William's son handed a gray suitcase to the police that contained A4 sheets signed by Emerjaith. Reagan had initially planned to kill only Emerjaith, but he realized that doing so would likely cause the rest of the family to raise the alarm. As a result, he chose to target the entire family. On the day of the murders, Peter was assigned to keep watch over Emerjaith, while Kenneth and another accomplice, William, went to the family's home in London. They remained there for several hours, but exactly how the other family members were killed remains unclear. Amarjeet was murdered at Kenneth's home, which was later completely renovated, including the replacement of all furniture, to eliminate any evidence. 8 months later, a major breakthrough occurred when forensic experts re-examined Amarjeet's clothing. They discovered a folded letter inside his right sock. The letter was addressed to Kenneth and dated February 12, 2003, proving that Amarjeet had been at Kenneth's house on the day he disappeared. Unknown to his killers, Amarjeet had deliberately left this clue behind. This vital piece of evidence ultimately aided the police investigation. A lengthy 9-month trial concluded with a unanimous jury verdict. Peter Rees was sentenced to 23 years in prison for the murder of Amarjeet Chauhan. Meanwhile, Kenneth Reagan and William Hornsey were each given 5 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Nancy, Chiranjit Kaur, Ravinder, and Devinder, ensuring they would spend the remainder of their lives in prison. Later, the remains of Chiranjit Kaur, Amarjeet's mother-in-law, were discovered off the coast of the Isle of Wight. Sadly, the bodies of the 2 young children, 18-month-old Devinder and 2-month-old Ravinder, were never found. It is often hard to understand how someone could commit such horrific acts against children. Usually, individuals who carry out such crimes suffer from psychological problems or do not grasp the seriousness of their actions. However, this was not the case with Kenneth, who was considered mentally sound. For him, the brutal acts he committed were merely a way to accomplish his objectives, and he showed no hesitation in taking innocent lives to pursue his own ambitions. Anchor was deeply affected by the incident. He now lives in New Zealand, permanently separated from his nephews. A family video recorded just 2 days before their disappearance was found in their empty home. This heartbreaking recording stands as the final testament to a once happy family destroyed by tragedy. Moving on to the next case. The case of Connie Alm. Connie Alm was born on July 18, 1974, in Malaysia. She was the younger of 2 daughters and shared a very close relationship with her parents. In 1995, Connie moved to the United States to pursue higher education and a career in information technology. While living in the U.S., Connie met a man named Brandon. He was an American of Chinese ethnicity, whose parents had emigrated from Singapore more than 20 years earlier. Initially, Connie and Brandon were just friends, but their friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. Brandon became an important figure in Connie's life, offering support and assistance in various ways. They married in 2001. By 2003, Connie's life seemed on track. She was working as an analyst in San Diego, planning a future with her husband, and hoping to start a family. However, that year her life changed dramatically. The trouble began when Connie's father, Ong Bai-yong, was diagnosed with cancer. Connie decided to fly to Malaysia to support her family during this difficult period. On June 1, 2003, Connie and Brandon arrived in Malaysia. After a few days, Brandon returned to the United States, leaving Connie to care for her father in Kuala Lumpur. Despite the distance, Connie and Brandon remained in close contact through daily phone calls, often talking for hours and sharing stories about their daily lives, including their 2 pets. Connie's father underwent surgery to remove a kidney, and fortunately, his health began to improve. As he recovered, Connie planned her return to the United States, scheduling a flight for June 14, 2003. The evening before her departure, Connie organized a farewell dinner at a local restaurant, inviting her mother, sister, and closest friends. On June 13, 2003, Connie and her mother arrived at the meeting point later than the others. They had difficulty finding a parking spot in front of the mall, so Connie parked in the underground lot. Her mother, however, was more concerned about the poor lighting in the lot than the parking fee. Once they reached the restaurant on the 2nd floor, Connie was excited to reunite with her childhood friends, whom she had not seen in a long time. They spent several hours catching up, but Connie soon noticed that her mother, Pearlie, appeared tired. When Connie asked if her mother wanted to leave, Pearlie said she had a lot to do that day, but was willing to depart early, promising her friends she would return soon. Connie, her mother, and her sister Elsie got up from the table to pay for parking. They went to the payment terminal, located on the 1st floor, a level above the underground parking lot. While waiting in line, Connie realized she had left the parking ticket in the car and asked her sister and mother to stay in line while she went back to retrieve it. Elsie and Pearlie waited for 10 more minutes, but Connie had not returned. Elsie began calling her. The first call went unanswered, and the second went to voicemail. This was unusual, and Elsie and Pearlie immediately sensed that something was wrong. They rushed to the parking lot and were shocked to find that Connie's car was gone. They searched the area multiple times to confirm, and upon realizing the car had indeed disappeared, they understood that Connie must have been taken along with it. Pearlie was certain that something had happened to her daughter, as Connie would never leave without informing anyone. Although the lot was poorly lit, surveillance cameras could provide clues. Mall security initially refused to show the footage, but relented after Pearlie pleaded for their assistance. At midnight, Pearlie and Elsie sat in front of a monitor and watched the disturbing footage, confirming their worst fears. The video showed Connie's car speeding out of the underground parking lot, crashing through the barrier. Despite the poor quality, it was clear a man was driving, with Connie in the passenger seat. Her body was positioned as if she were trying to distance herself from the driver, leaning against the door. Upon seeing the footage, Pearlie immediately filed a report of disappearance and kidnapping at the police station. The police launched an investigation while Connie's family and friends drove around Kuala Lumpur desperately searching for her purple proton tiara. Meanwhile, Brandon, Connie's husband, began to feel a growing sense of unease. He tried calling his wife multiple times, but she did not answer. He then contacted her mother, who informed him of the events that had occurred. The news of Connie's disappearance left Brandon in shock. Pearlie could hear him sobbing over the phone. As dawn broke, Connie's friends and family reluctantly returned home, their search efforts having yielded no results. The police disseminated information about the disappearance and conducted their own search, but unfortunately, this did not lead to any breakthroughs. Even the footage from the mall parking lot, where Connie had been abducted, failed to provide any clues about the identity of the driver. More than 72 hours had passed since Connie's loved ones last saw her. Authorities believed that if she had been kidnapped, it was unlikely to be for ransom. If money had been the motive, the kidnapper would have demanded it by now. Police made a disturbing discovery when they found Connie's car abandoned on a city street. The front right tire was severely damaged, indicating it had been driven on while flat for some time, causing it to shred. In the back of the car, a large red stain was observed on the passenger seat. Forensic experts collected evidence, including scrapings from the back seat and fingerprints from the steering wheel and other parts of the vehicle. Numerous clues were found in the car. Connie's family and friends clung to hope and prayed for her safe return. However, their hopes were shattered the next day when her car was discovered. On June 17th, a road worker noticed a strong, foul odor emanating from a manhole near the highway. Upon lifting the lid, he found a body that someone had attempted to burn using 2 car tires and sticks. A team of leading forensic experts from the Royal Malaysian Police immediately arrived at the scene. They observed that 2 car tires filled with concrete, normally used as stands for road signs, had been placed on top of the body. It appeared the perpetrator had tried to conceal the body, making identification more difficult. Although the discovery of the body seemed to confirm the family's worst fears, Connie's mother, Pearlie, refused to accept that her daughter was dead without official confirmation. "Until they confirm it, we will continue to hope that she will turn up alive," she said. The family went to the morgue, but the doctor stated that the body's identity could not yet be confirmed. Connie's family provided DNA samples for comparative analysis. Unfortunately, the results confirmed their worst nightmare. The body was indeed that of their daughter, Connie. Some sources suggest that prior to the DNA results, the family had identified the jewelry on the body. However, as a devoted mother, Pearlie held on to the hope that her daughter was still alive until the very end. The emotional torment she endured is unimaginable. The autopsy revealed that Connie had suffered 2 stab wounds to her abdomen, and a medical forensic expert found signs of strangulation. A cloth had been tied around her neck with multiple knots, and semen was found inside her body, providing a source for DNA analysis. A few days after the body was discovered, an incident raised questions about police conduct. An undercover officer, Subramaniam Ravichandran, reported to his superiors that on the night of Connie's disappearance, he had been on duty with his partner, patrolling the streets of Kuala Lumpur on motorcycles. Both officers were dressed in civilian clothes. They noticed a car parked improperly, taking up half the road, and stopped to investigate if anyone was inside. Ravichandran approached the driver's side and saw a man behind the wheel with a woman in the passenger seat. He knocked on the window, and when the driver lowered it partially, Ravichandran showed his police ID and asked what they were doing. The driver responded that they were just chatting and not doing anything illegal. Ravichandran then requested to see their IDs. As the driver handed over the documents, the woman in the passenger seat made unusual hand gestures, seemingly asking for help, but stopped whenever the man looked at her. Noticing this, Ravichandran asked the driver to step out of the car. The driver reacted aggressively, claiming that Ravichandran was not a police officer, but a thief. He then rolled up the window and reached for the ignition. Realizing the car might drive off, Ravichandran drew his pistol and shot at the right front wheel. Despite this, the car sped away. Ravichandran and his partner pursued on a motorcycle but were unable to catch up, which was puzzling given that the car had a flat tire. At the time, the Malaysian Police Department was in disarray, which may explain why the officer did not call for backup or report the incident. The car with the flat tire was a purple Proton Tiara, driven by 27-year-old Ahmad Najib bin Aris, with a woman named Connie Alm as a passenger. Although the police chase did not result in an immediate arrest, the officers managed to obtain documents from the driver. Tragically, Connie Alm was later found dead. It is possible that if the officer had acted differently during the encounter, the outcome might have been different. Unfortunately, Ravichandran only informed his superiors about the incident after Connie's body was discovered. The only positive outcome of that night was that the police had obtained documents that could help identify the suspect. Beyond Connie's family, many Malaysians attended her farewell ceremony. Her death was a devastating loss for her husband, Brandon. Meanwhile, the police launched a search for Ahmad Najib. They discovered that he did not live at the address listed in his documents, but his name was legitimate, providing multiple leads to track him down. The police checked Ahmad Najib's name in the Registry of Documented Marriages and the National Agency of Social Support. They found a match, revealing that Ahmad Najib bin Aris was born and raised in Muar, Malaysia. He was the second of 4 siblings and had dropped out of school to work and support his family. In 1998, he moved from Muar to Kuala Lumpur, where he married and had 2 children. Since 2000, he had worked as a cabin cleaner for Malaysia Airlines. Knowing the name of Ahmad Najib's wife and her workplace, the police began surveillance. She worked at a metropolitan bank, and after her shift ended, undercover officers followed her to determine her home address. Once they knew where Ahmad Najib lived, the police needed to ensure he was inside the house without alerting him. For 3 days, they monitored the house, but Ahmad Najib did not appear. At one point, investigators doubted whether he still lived with his family, though this was a premature conclusion. On the fourth day of surveillance, around 4 a.m., a car pulled up to the house and Ahmad Najib stepped out. Within a minute, he was handcuffed and taken to the police station for questioning. News of the arrest and the suspect's identity quickly reached the press. Many who knew Ahmad Najib were shocked to learn he was suspected of kidnapping and killing Connie Alm. Those familiar with him described him as a devoted husband, a caring father of two, and an overall good person. However, investigators soon discovered that he may have been hiding a darker side. During the initial interrogation, Ahmad Najib remained calm and requested to speak only with the head of the Criminal Investigation Division. It was not until he was presented with evidence linking him to Connie Alm that Ahmad Najib began to deny wrongdoing. His confidence waned as the evidence mounted. Investigators showed him 2 IDs he had given an officer on the night of Connie Alm's kidnapping. They also revealed that blood stains had been found on his jacket and jeans, which DNA analysis would likely confirm belonged to Connie Alm. Realizing the officers had solid evidence and were not bluffing, Ahmad Najib confessed to kidnapping and killing Connie Alm. Within 10 days of the kidnapping, on June 23, 2003, he was taken to court, where he repeated his confession. The police then conducted an investigative experiment in which Ahmad Najib led them to all the locations he had been with Connie Alm. He provided a detailed account of how he forced her to be intimate with him multiple times, how he ended her life, and how he attempted to dispose of her body. Evidence supporting his statements was found at every location he revealed. The investigation began at the underground parking lot, where cameras had captured footage of Ahmad Najib. According to his statement, he was waiting for his former boss, who had fired him and against whom he sought revenge. However, the claim about the former boss was never verified. Hiding in the darkness, he observed Connie Alm searching in her car and seized the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. He forcefully pushed her into the car, threatening that if she tried to escape or seek help, she would face dire consequences. Overwhelmed, Connie Alm became disoriented and obediently followed his instructions. Next, he took the driver's seat and sped out of the parking lot. After crashing through a barrier, he stopped in an industrial area where he began to harass Connie Alm. Just as this was happening, a plainclothes police officer approached the car. Ahmad Najib falsely told the officer that he had not realized he had taken the wrong person until the officer asked for identification from both him and his victim. Even assuming Ahmad Najib had intended to kidnap his former boss, his culpability remains unchanged. Undoubtedly, his former boss would have suffered the same fate as Connie Alm. According to Ahmad Najib's account, he managed to evade the pursuing officer. Despite the officer having his documents, Ahmad Najib did not consider releasing Connie Alm. Instead, he stopped the car on the street to replace a tire damaged by a bullet. Nearby, a car containing a woman was parked at the location where he had pulled over. He approached her and asked for a car jack, intending to change his tire. However, he noticed Connie Alm signaling to the woman, who then handed him the jack. He abandoned the idea of changing the tire and drove off immediately. Later, he stopped in a secluded area and used a knife to threaten Connie Alm, forcing her to engage in intimate acts with him. Afterwards, he drove to another district where he again coerced Connie Alm into satisfying him, both of them in the back seat. Connie Alm pleaded for mercy, but he took her life instead. He then disposed of her body in a manhole near a highway, moved the car to another location, and left it there. 16 hours later, he returned to the scene with a gasoline canister in an attempt to conceal evidence of the crime. DNA analysis confirmed that the semen found in Connie Alm's body belonged to Ahmad Najib bin Aris. His DNA was also discovered in the car, along with his fingerprints, providing further irrefutable proof of his guilt. Additionally, analysis revealed that the blood on his jacket and jeans belonged to Connie Alm. The trial began on September 15, 2003, 3 months after Connie Alm's death. This high-profile case drew widespread attention from the Malaysian media and public. The trial attracted not only ordinary Malaysians and journalists, but also individuals seeking to boost their reputations, including numerous attorneys representing Ahmad Najib. Despite admitting guilt during the investigation and overwhelming evidence, including DNA proof, Ahmad Najib changed his stance after consulting 6 attorneys. At his first trial, he claimed his confession had been made under police pressure. However, the judge before whom Ahmad Najib had confessed immediately after his arrest testified that there were no signs of physical abuse, and Ahmad Najib had appeared calm and relaxed. The attorneys then shifted strategy, arguing that Connie Alm had been in the car with Ahmad Najib voluntarily. They suggested that Connie Alm, a black belt in Taekwondo, should have attempted to escape if she had been held against her will. However, this attempt to blame Connie Alm was rejected, as people respond differently in critical situations. Another claim surfaced that Connie Alm had consensual intimacy with Ahmad Najib and that her death was caused by strangulation to heighten the experience. Forensic experts rejected this account. The cloth around Connie's neck was tied in multiple knots, suggesting she had no intention or ability to loosen it. Indeed, the cloth was so tight that the skin beneath was the only area on the body not affected by the fire. Furthermore, the cloth was the type used for cleaning plain windows, and given Ahmad Najib's job as a cabin cleaner, this linked him more closely to the crime. Additionally, the lawyers struggled to explain the stab wounds on Connie's body. At this point, Ahmad Najib's attorneys advised him to remain silent and not testify. Many questioned why Connie did not escape the car when she had at least two opportunities. On February 23, 2005, Ahmad Najib bin Aris was convicted of all charges related to the crime committed against Connie Alm. The evidence pointed to him as the sole perpetrator. Ahmad Najib received the maximum sentence under Malaysian law: 20 years imprisonment and 10 strokes of the cane for violating Connie Alm's sexual integrity, plus the death penalty for causing her death. In Malaysia, the death penalty is carried out by hanging, a method differing significantly from the lethal injection used in some other countries, such as the USA. Ahmad Najib's lawyers attempted to appeal the sentence twice, but were unsuccessful both times. In 2010, Ahmad Najib petitioned the head of state to commute his death sentence to life imprisonment, maintaining his innocence. However, his plea for clemency was rejected. More than 13 years after Connie Alm's death, on September 23, 2016, Ahmad Najib's sentence was carried out. He was 40 years old at the time of his execution. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.